104.5 The Team, your home for New York Yankees baseball. Our friend Buster Olney joins us. Buster, at about 10 to 10:30 this morning, my intern kicks my office door open and goes, "The Yankees just traded Andrew Miller for Joey Gallo." How crazy or relevant is that?
Well, it's not relevant. It's not true. I checked on it as soon as that came out, and let's face it, we are entering the crazy season part of the year, where every day there's going to be a bunch of rumors like that, and you run them down, and from what I understand, there's absolutely nothing to it. Now, on paper, you might say that it could be something that sort of structure might interest the Yankees in some form or fashion, because Joey Gallo would be a nice fit for them depending on how they evaluate him. You know, he's a big swing and miss guy, and the Rangers certainly could use a pitcher like Andrew Miller, but no, there's nothing to that. I suspect you'll hear a bunch of rumors about the Yankees and their guys and whether or not they're going to trade, but as of this morning, they're still not selling. They have not declared themselves a seller, despite, I think, a lot of evidence which probably should point them in the other direction.
So, all right, so I was going to ask you, does this trade make any sense? Is this something that we're just beginning to see a framework of a trade? But you're telling me the Yankees aren't even looking at anybody at this point.
Well, they are definitely looking. They're preparing both tracks for the possibility that they could be buyers, and they're preparing for the possibility that they can be sellers. They're having dialogue with teams about prospects. They're doing a lot of background checks. They're doing a lot of scouting in case they do decide to sell, because they certainly have a lot of pieces with Aroldis Chapman and Andrew Miller and Carlos Beltran and some of those guys. But to this point, they haven't made that decision. I do think that when you look at their schedule coming out of the All-Star break, they're going to have a pretty good read on their team in a couple of weeks as to whether or not they should be buyers or sellers, because they face nothing but contenders coming out of the break with games against the Red Sox, the Giants, and they go down to Houston. They play them, which is in keeping with their second-half schedule, which is absolutely brutal. It's the toughest schedule among all contenders in baseball. 58 of their last 74 games are against teams with records over 500. That is easily the most among any team that probably we look at as a possible contender. But I think the Yankees are going to wait and gather more information before making that decision whether to buy or sell.
Buster, is there a magic number if the Yankees fall, say, X games behind by X date? It's time to blow it up? What do you think?
Not that I know of, but I think that some of the magic numbers that you'd look at as of today, according to Baseball Prospectus, the Yankees have a 4.4% chance of making the playoffs as a wild card team. That means a 1 in 25 shot of making a one-game playoff, which you have to win to go on, okay? And in baseball terms, that's not very good. That's not something you bet on. If you remember last year, we criticized the San Diego Padres a lot because they sort of ignored the reality of their situation, and rather than trade guys like Justin Upton for Michael Fulmer of the New York Mets, they sort of plowed ahead and decided to take draft picks instead, and they're paying the price for that. You know, Michael Fulmer in the Padres uniform look pretty good right now, and that's the reality that the Yankees are staring at right now. When you look at their playoff odds, the value of Andrew Miller, the value of Aroldis Chapman is not going to ever be higher than it is right now, which is why they need to, evaluate those questions before the deadline. And hopefully, from the Yankees' perspective, they're honest with themselves.
ESPN's Buster Olney joins us right here, Levack and Wolf, 104.5 The Team, live from the Tilted Kilt. So, Buster, what's a win for the Yankees this year? I mean, let's say the wild card doesn't happen. You say they have the hardest schedule or a very hard schedule.
The hardest schedule.
The hardest. Thanks a lot, schedule makers. So what's a win for them? Is it finish respectably? Is it make these moves and bring in young players? Like as you're looking back on the season, let's pretend it's over. What do they have to do right now for you to look at this season favorably?
Well, you could try to play your lottery ticket. As we move forward, they could say, you know what, let's play it out. Let's see if we can get back into it. And there is one path probably where they could do the Indiana Jones and they could survive this gauntlet of games in the second half against contenders and make the wild card. And I guess that would be a success. But again, it's extremely unlikely, 4% chance that they can actually do that. Which is why I think that a win a real win for the Yankees would be to set themselves up for a better spot in a better way in 2017. And I think we've done this exercise before, but let's say, for example, that they wind up with a Joey Gallo or a Kyle Schwarber. Maybe they wind up with both, depending on what sort of structure they come up with. But you could go into next year with Greg Bird and Starlin Castro, Didi Gregorius, Joey Gallo, Kyle Schwarber, maybe a young starting pitcher they add during this trade deadline period. I think that needs to be their focus, because I think that they're not far from that point where they could reasonably say 2016 is a lost year and you have to move on. But they haven't done that yet.
So, all right, you bring up these young players, but there's still guys on contract, and one of them is A-Rod, and he is now the least valuable player by, I think I've seen about 5 writers call him that. What do you do? What do the Yankees do with A-Rod right now?
Well, you could keep him on the team and then just ignore reality of his production. And I guess because he's owed $21 million for next year, $20 million for next year. But this is not like a 1-month small sample size. If you go back to August 7th of last year, he's batting .203 with about a strikeout in every 3 at-bats since last August 7th. He virtually has no role on the team. They already have sort of the guy who probably should be the DH in Carlos Beltran right now. The one thing that we've learned about Hal Steinbrenner's stewardship is he don't like to eat money. That's not his favorite thing to do. If they, don't play Alex Rodriguez that much the rest of this year and still go into spring training with him on the roster next year, that would make no sense. I'm kind of sitting here wondering why they haven't sort of acknowledged the obvious, and that is that Alex Rodriguez's days are behind him, and he's not an effective player anymore. He really doesn't have a role in this team, and yet he's still on the team, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Buster, any way that Joe Girardi or Brian Cashman aren't in their roles with the Yankees this time next year?
I don't know. I'm curious to sort of see what happens as we go through the trade deadline, because let's face it, if in fact they don't make the postseason this year, it'd be the 3rd time in 4 years that they haven't, and I think at that point, all bets are off. And if you're Hal Steinbrenner, you probably are well within your rights to change anybody you want, whether it's Joe Girardi or Brian Cashman. I suspect that a front office that didn't necessarily support the re-signing of Alex Rodriguez when they did that in 2007 or some of the other deals, they probably are looking forward to turning things over. And it'll be interesting to see the response of ownership and if the two sides sort of reach a point where they feel like, maybe the organization should go in a different direction, as they said in Bull Durham.
Hey, Buster, quick question about Terry Collins. Were you surprised he didn't play a single Met in the All-Star game?
No, because he let's face it, he knows their physical state better than anybody, and that's really what that came down to.
Yep.
With so many questions about Steven Matz and so many questions about Noah Syndergaard, he probably was thinking, I can line up Bartolo Colon to start the second half, and Cespedes took himself out. So, those seems to be the overriding concern for the Mets, and it's still, and we touched on this last week, the Mets' handling of Noah Syndergaard, it's just strange to me from the outside looking in, and I don't have their medical information, but when you have, 2 different situations this year with Syndergaard where he's had elbow issues and he's had a situation where, he's had a shoulder issue, I can't figure it out. On one hand they're saying, he's good to go, ready, no problem, and yet his velocity goes down, he's got soreness in his elbow. I don't know what's going on, but their handling of him does seem really odd.
Buster, we've been having this debate on the station. This won't shock you at all right here on 104.5, the team, your home for Yankees baseball. Who's going to have a brighter second half? I mean, when you look at the way the Mets are handling that rotation and all their issues, and then you look at the Yankees and you bring up the hardest schedule, who's going to have a better post-All-Star break season?
Well, to me, if the Yankees can accomplish something, and your question was dead on about, what's the best scenario to come out in the second half, if they go and make great trades and get really good value, and let's face it, if they put Chapman and Miller out there, those will be the 2 most coveted players in the market. And whether it's the Cleveland Indians, who I think might be the front runner if Miller's actually traded, they've got really good prospects, or the Texas Rangers, or the Dodgers, or the Giants, you're going to get really good value in return. And you could actually draw something good out of 2016. With the Mets, it's so murky with the state of their starting rotation and the physical issues with Syndergaard and with Matz, and now with Matt Harvey lost for the year, I have a hard time thinking that the Mets are going to survive this thing. Maybe they'll grind it out. It's now a team that's been posted, has gotten through a postseason, and can draw on experience of that and work through it. But man, when you look at the incredibly easy schedules for two of the teams they're contending against in the wild card race, the Pirates and the Dodgers, it's going to be a really difficult road for the Mets to make it back to the postseason.
Buster, what second half stories are you looking forward to?
Oh, the Cubs.
Yeah.
Let's face it. We started the year with the Cubs, and we're going to finish the year with the Cubs. The question of whether or not they're going to take down the great white whale and actually win the championship is probably going to be the most compelling story that we have in baseball in the second half. And I as a writer, I really enjoyed the trade conversation, and so the next 18 days are going to be fascinating to see some of the moves and some of the deals that are made. And I think the Indians are really interesting because right now they're the best team in the American League. If, in fact, the Yankees decide to sell Miller and Chapman, I think the Indians are going to surprise people with how aggressive they are in going after one of those two teams.
Wow, I like it. Buster Olney with us right here on 104.5 The Team. Buster, where are you at this weekend?
I am at Yankee Stadium.
Whoa.
We've got the Yankees, and we've got the Red Sox, and we'll be talking a whole lot of trade stuff on Sunday night, my guess is.
Buster, you know my feeling. As long as they win these three games, I'll be all right with the rest of the rest of the season.
Yeah, but here's the thing. As a Yankee fan, you should be conflicted because if they win these three games, they'll probably be pushed more into the buy column versus the sell column. And let's face it, taking 3 or 4 from the Indians' big picture may not have been the best thing for the organization.
Buster, I just can't root against the Yankees when they play the Red Sox. It doesn't
You
matter.
are a true loyalist, sir. The problem is you might be taking down 2017 as well as 2016.
And, Buster, I'm like a baseball wife because when the Yankees lose, I got to deal with Jeff's deep sorrow.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Mood. Yeah, I hear you. My son is a Braves fan. Can you imagine my son?
Oh, that poor kid. I feel like you as the dad, he should have been steered towards a better team.
No, I let my kids make their own decision, and the Braves flag is really tattered, but you'll appreciate this loyalty, Jeff. It's tattered from the wind, and I said, do you want to replace the Braves flag? He said, we're going to be just like the team. When we start getting better, we get a new flag.
Nice.
I like it. Well, you got Ian Anderson, our local kid. He's on his way up. He just had a good starting in the minors, so hopefully we'll all be Braves fans in the not-too-distant future.
That sounds awesome.
Buster, we really appreciate your time, man. Have a great weekend and can't wait to hear your reports from Yankee Stadium.